The alien delegation from the Galactic Defense Council chose a Tuesday morning to arrive on Earth because apparently even advanced civilizations can't get their act together on Mondays. Their ship, which looked suspiciously like someone had welded a disco ball to a giant soup can, descended upon the United Nations headquarters with all the grace of a drunken pelican. Commander Pax-12, the lead delegate, emerged from the vessel sporting what appeared to be a uniform made entirely of living metal and enough medals to sink a small boat. The commander had 4 arms, blue-tinted skin, and an expression that suggested they'd just smelled something particularly unpleasant which, given that they'd landed in New York City, was entirely possible. "Greetings, Primitive Defense Force of Earth," Pax-12 announced through their universal translator, which somehow managed to make them sound like a snobbish British butler with a head cold. "We have come to evaluate your military capabilities and determine your fitness for joining the Galactic Defense Council." The UN Secretary-General maintained an admirably straight face while responding, "Welcome to Earth. We've prepared a comprehensive tour of our various defensive capabilities, including a visit to some of our most formidable natural resources." "Natural resources," Pax-12 laughed, a sound reminiscent of a squeaky toy being stepped on. "Surely you jest. The GDC requires advanced weaponry, not rocks and sticks." That's when they met Jack Murphy, director of the Global Wildlife Defense Initiative, and quite possibly the only person on Earth who could make cargo shorts look semi-professional. Jack had been running the GWD-DI program for 5 years, ever since someone in the government realized that having weaponized animals might come in handy if aliens ever showed up. Today was his moment to shine, and he was determined to make the most of it. "Commander Pax-12," Jack said, extending his hand before remembering that the aliens considered physical contact about as appealing as licking a public bathroom floor. "Welcome to Earth. I'll be showing you some of our most effective defensive assets." The alien commander's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. "You're a zookeeper," Wildlife Defense Coordinator Jack corrected, though he was pretty sure the aliens could smell the hippo poop on his boots. "And yes, Earth's megafauna are a crucial part of our planetary defense strategy." This statement was met with what could only be described as alien giggling. The entire delegation, 7 beings of various shapes and sizes, all began making sounds like a choir of leaking balloons. "You expect us to believe," Pax-12 wheezed between fits of laughter, "that your primitive organic life forms pose any threat to advanced civilizations? Our scanners indicate that most of your largest creatures are herbivores." Jack smiled the smile of someone who had watched a hippopotamus turn a titanium-feeding trough into origami. "Why don't we start the tour at our African megafauna facility? I think you'll find our inhabitants quite interesting." "Oh yes," another alien delegate chimed in, this one looking like a cross between a praying mantis and a disco ball. "We've reviewed your wildlife database. Particularly amusing are these hippopotamuses, large aquatic herbivores that spend their days wallowing in mud. How quaint." "They do enjoy their mud baths," Jack agreed pleasantly. "They also have a bite force of 2,000 pounds per square inch and are responsible for more human deaths in Africa than any other large animal. But I'm sure that's nothing compared to your engineered warbeasts." The aliens exchanged glances, their earlier amusement flickering slightly. "You sound proud of this fact," Pax-12 noted. "Oh, I'm just getting started," Jack replied, checking his watch. "It's almost feeding time. Would you like to see what happens when we introduce new enrichment items to their enclosure? We recently switched to reinforced titanium alloy balls. The last batch only lasted 2 days." For the first time since landing, Commander Pax-12 looked ever so slightly uncertain. But their pride wouldn't let them back down from what they perceived as an obvious bluff. "Very well. Earthkeeper, show us these supposedly dangerous grass-eaters. The Galactic Defense Council hasn't had a good laugh in decades." Jack led the way, quietly sending a message on his phone to Luna Rodriguez, the head hippopotamus keeper bringing company. "Make sure Harold's had his breakfast. We might need him to make a point." The reply came back almost instantly. Harold just destroyed his 3rd enrichment ball of the day. "He's in a mood." Perfect, Jack thought. Sometimes the best defense was a 3-ton angry vegetarian with an attitude problem. The African megafauna facility looked disappointingly normal to the alien delegation. They'd probably expected something more impressive than the sprawling, naturalistic enclosure spread out before them. Commander Pax 12's upper set of arms remained crossed while the lower pair gestured dismissively at the habitat. This is your military installation? It appears to be nothing more than an elaborate garden with pools. Luna Rodriguez chose that moment to make her entrance, and she did it with style, riding up to the group on one of the facility's electric carts, wearing khaki shorts and a shirt that read Hippos, nature's perfect killing machine, complete with a cartoon hippo wearing sunglasses. Jack had never been more proud of his headkeeper. "Welcome to my domain," Luna announced, hopping off the cart with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to move quickly around multi-ton animals. "I'm Luna Rodriguez, and I'm in charge of making sure our residents don't get bored. When they get bored, they get creative, and creative hippos tend to redecorate, usually with their teeth." The Mantis Disco Ball alien, who had introduced themselves as Science Officer Glimmer, pulled out what appeared to be a floating tablet. "According to our scans, these creatures spend approximately 16 hours a day partially submerged in water and grazing. They show no signs of advanced intelligence or technological adaptation." Luna snorted. "Yeah, and I spend approximately 8 hours a day sleeping, but I can still kick someone's butt if they break into my house at night. It's not about how they spend their time, it's about what they can do when they need to." Commander Pax 12's expression shifted to what might have been a smirk, though it was hard to tell with their face tentacles. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order. The Galactic Defense Council always travels with one of our elite warbeasts. A simple combat trial would prove definitively that naturally evolved creatures are no match for engineered perfection." Jack and Luna exchanged glances. This was going better than they'd hoped. "A combat trial?" Jack asked, trying to sound concerned rather than gleeful. "I don't know. Our insurance specifically prohibits organized animal fighting." Unless Luna chimed in, it's classified as an international diplomatic exercise, which this technically would be. The aliens were practically vibrating with anticipation. Commander Pax 12's face tentacles were curling in what they probably thought was a subtle display of superiority. "We will even grant Earth immediate provisional membership in the GDC if your champion manages to last more than 5 minutes against our decimator." "Decimator?" Luna mouthed silently at Jack, rolling her eyes. "And if we win?" Jack asked. "If your primitive beast somehow prevails," Pax 12 said with the confidence of someone who's never seen a hippo throw a crocodile like a frisbee, "the GDC will classify Earth as a Class A defensive stronghold and provide full technological integration privileges." "Done," Jack said quickly, before the aliens could reconsider. "We choose Harold as our champion." On cue, a massive dark shape surfaced in the nearest pool, water cascading off grey hide as Harold the hippopotamus emerged like some ancient god rising from the depths. He opened his mouth in what the aliens probably thought was a yawn, but the humans knew was Harold's way of measuring things he was considering biting. "This is your champion." Science Officer Glimmer actually dropped their tablet. "The creature appears to be sleeping while standing up." "Harold's just conserving energy," Luna explained, tossing a whole watermelon into the enclosure. The fruit barely touched the water before disappearing into Harold's gaping maw with a crunch that made several aliens flinch. "He's been looking for a new challenge. The reinforced enrichment toys aren't really doing it for him anymore." Commander Pax 12 was practically giddy. "Very well. We shall prepare the combat arena immediately. I assume a water feature will be required for your champion." "Oh yes," Jack agreed. "Harold does his best work in the water. Just ask the last boat that accidentally entered his territory. Actually, you can't ask them, the boat's gone, and the people have developed a very specific phobia of large aquatic mammals." As the aliens hurried off to prepare their warbeast, Luna turned to Jack. "You know Harold's just going to want extra melons after this, right? He's getting spoiled. If he wins us advanced alien technology, he can have all the melons in South America." They both watched as Harold submerged himself again, leaving just his nostrils above water level, looking for all the world like a lazy river horse taking an afternoon nap. The aliens had no idea what they were about to witness, and honestly, Jack almost felt bad for them. Almost. The alien combat arena materialized in the middle of the facility's backfield 30 minutes later, because apparently when you have sufficiently advanced technology, you just carry a portable battle stadium around with you. It looked like someone had crossed the Roman Colosseum with a Soviet swimming pool, all gleaming metal and unnecessarily dramatic architecture. Your combat facility appears adequate, Commander Pax 12 announced, as if they'd just bestowed a great honor upon Earth. Now, witness the fruit of 10,000 years of genetic and cybernetic enhancement. The commander pressed a sequence of buttons on their wrist device, and a section of their ship began to lower towards the ground. Fog rolled out dramatically from the opening bay doors, and Jack could have sworn he heard theme music playing. They really went all in on the presentation, didn't they? Luna whispered, watching as more fog machines activated. I feel like I'm at a rock concert. Ladies, gentlemen, and various other life forms, Science Officer Glimmer announced through a floating speaker system, I present to you the Decimator. The fog parted to reveal what appeared to be the result of someone throwing a tiger, a tank, and a transformer into a blender. The creature stood roughly 15 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in armored plates that shifted and realigned with each movement. Its 6 legs ended in titanium claws that left deep gouges in the ground, and its 3 heads, because apparently one wasn't enough, were each equipped with what looked suspiciously like laser cannons. Behold its magnificent weaponry, Pax 12 crowed. Plasma-enhanced bite force, regenerative armor plating, internal missile systems, and my personal favorite, the sonic disruption roar. As if on cue, all 3 heads let out a mechanical shriek that made everyone within 100 yards cover their ears. Everyone except Harold, who had dozed off in his transport pool and responded with a loud snore. Is your champion? Sleeping, one of the alien delegates asked incredulously. Harold's just practicing energy conservation, Luna replied with a straight face. It's an advanced military technique. The Decimator prowled around its side of the arena, occasionally firing laser blasts into the air in what was probably supposed to be an intimidating display. Harold continued to float in his pool, occasionally blowing bubbles. Perhaps Commander Pax 12 suggested, with what passed for a smirk among their species, your beast requires motivation. Shall we demonstrate the Decimator's capabilities on some target practice drones? Jack shrugged. Sure, why not? Harold loves dinner theater. The aliens released a series of floating spheres into the arena. The Decimator's response was immediate and thoroughly excessive. Laser beams sliced through the air, missiles launched from ports along its spine, and its armored tail whipped through the remaining drones with devastating precision. Within seconds, the arena was filled with falling debris and the smell of ozone. Impressive, Jack admitted. While secretly typing on his phone, did you remember to give Harold his pre-battle snack? Luna's response came quickly: 3 watermelons and a pumpkin. He's just showing off by pretending to sleep. You know how he gets. The Decimator finished its display by rearing up on its hind legs and unleashing another sonic blast, this one powerful enough to shake the reinforced arena walls. Harold responded by rolling over in his pool, creating a small wave that splashed some of the alien delegates. This is embarrassing, Science Officer Glimmer muttered, wiping water from their crystalline surface. Your champion appears to be defective. Oh no, Luna said, not even trying to hide her grin anymore. Harold's just getting a feel for the water acoustics. Hippos are very sensitive to vibrations, you know. They use them to communicate underwater. To communicate what? Asked one of the smaller delegates. Usually things like territory boundaries, mating calls, and exactly how many pieces they're going to tear something into, Jack explained helpfully. Harold's particularly good at that last one. He's got a whole system worked out. Commander Pax 12 had apparently had enough of the humans' casual attitude. Enough of this farce. Let the combat trial begin. Decimator, Battle Protocol Alpha. The massive Warbeast charged toward the pool, all 3 heads firing laser beams, while Harold continued to float peacefully on his back. Should we warn them? Luna asked, watching as the Decimator approached the water's edge. Nah, Jack replied, pulling out his phone to record. Some lessons you just have to learn the hard way. Harold opened one eye. The Decimator reached the edge of the pool with all the subtlety of a nuclear-powered jackhammer, its 6 legs sending tremors through the ground that would have registered on the Richter scale. Harold continued to float, displaying all the concern of a retiree on a pool noodle. Your beast appears to be malfunctioning, Commander Pax 12 observed, face tentacles twitching with anticipation. Perhaps it requires maintenance. Oh no, Luna said, already backing up to what she considered a safe distance. Harold just likes to make an entrance. You might want to step behind the reinforced barrier. Preposterous. Our decimator's armor can withstand. The rest of that sentence was lost in what could only be described as the sound of 3 tons of angry hippopotamus, deciding that peace was never an option. Harold moved from floating serenely to full battle mode in approximately 0.3 seconds, creating a wave that would have made a tsunami feel inadequate. The decimator fired its first salvo of lasers, which reflected off the water's surface and ended up scorching several very expensive pieces of alien monitoring equipment. Harold responded by demonstrating why hippos don't technically swim, they bounce off the bottom of their habitat like angry aquatic pogo sticks. Fascinating, Science Officer Glimmer observed, hastily taking notes while backing away. The specimen appears to be using water displacement as a weapon. Most ingenious. No, Jack corrected, still filming. Harold just really hates robots. We lost 3 automated cleaning systems last month. He took it personally. The decimator, apparently realizing that long-range weapons weren't going to cut it, activated its sonic weapon system. The resulting blast created an impressive series of waves in the combat pool. Harold, who regularly dealt with bull hippos trying the same trick minus the technology, was distinctly unimpressed. Your champion appears to be retreating, Commander Pax 12 crowed as Harold submerged completely. Perhaps now would be an appropriate time to. Luna cut them off. That's not retreating. That's hunting. The water went still. Too still. The kind of still that makes evolutionary survival instincts start sending urgent memos to the brain about finding somewhere else to be. The decimator took a tentative step into the pool, its adaptive armor reconfiguring for aquatic combat. 3 sets of electronic eyes scanned the water's surface, searching for any sign of movement. The alien delegates leaned forward in anticipation, their earlier confidence starting to show small cracks. I don't understand, one of the smaller aliens whispered. Our scanners indicate this creature spends most of its time eating plants. How can it generate such powerful bioelectric readings? Fun fact about hippos, Jack offered helpfully. They're actually more closely related to whales than to other land mammals. You know, those giant predators that used to hunt megalodons. What's a megalo? The question was interrupted by Harold's first real attack. He erupted from the water like a grey submarine with teeth, moving at speeds that something that size had no business achieving. His jaws opened wide enough to give everyone a good look at why hippos don't need to eat meat to maintain those impressive tusks. The decimator attempted to activate its defensive protocols, but it turned out that 10,000 years of genetic engineering still hadn't prepared it for 3 tons of pure African attitude, moving at 40 kilometers per hour. The Warbeast's adaptive armor began shifting to compensate for the impact, which was rather like watching someone try to deflect an asteroid with a pool noodle. How is it moving so fast? Science Officer Glimmer demanded, their crystalline surface vibrating with excitement. Our calculations suggested. Your calculations, Luna interrupted, probably assumed hippos swim. They don't. They run underwater. And they can do that for about 30 minutes without coming up for air. The decimator fired another sonic blast, this time underwater. Harold, who had spent his entire life dealing with bull hippos trying to outroar him, responded with a bellow that made the arena's reinforced walls vibrate. Several pieces of alien monitoring equipment spontaneously decided to retire. That's impossible, Commander Pax 12 protested. The subharmonic frequencies alone should have. Should have what? Jack asked innocently. Upset the 3-ton anger machine that regularly bites crocodiles in half for fun. The one that's currently treating your Warbeast like an oversized chew toy. The decimator was indeed discovering that its advanced weaponry meant very little to an animal that could bite through steel, and had spent countless generations solving most of its problems by being bigger, meaner, and significantly more bad-tempered than whatever was bothering it. Perhaps Science Officer Glimmer suggested, frantically taking notes even as they backed away further, we should proceed to the next phase of testing. Oh no, Luna grinned. Harold's just getting started. He hasn't even done his special move yet. Special move? Commander Pax 12's face tentacles went pale. As if on cue, Harold demonstrated exactly why hippos were never invited to Olympic diving competitions. The water in the combat pool rose like a miniature tidal wave as 3 tons of semi-aquatic attitude problem launched itself completely out of the water, aiming straight for the decimator's central control cluster. Now might be a good time to mention, Jack added, still recording, that hippos can't actually swim. They just get really angry at gravity. Time seemed to slow down as 3 tons of hippopotamus achieved what could only be described as temporary flight. The decimator's 3 heads tracked upward in perfect synchronization, all showing the mechanical equivalent of "oh no." "That's not possible," Commander Pax 12 whispered, their face tentacles curling in horror. "The mass-to-thrust ratio alone." Physics, Luna laughed. "Harold doesn't negotiate with physics." The decimator's automatic defense systems activated, covering its body in an energy shield that could supposedly withstand direct hits from orbital weapons. This turned out to be about as effective as trying to stop a meteor with a paper umbrella. Harold crashed into the Warbeast with the kind of impact that makes insurance companies add new clauses to their policies. "Fascinating," Science Officer Glimmer exclaimed, even as they ducked behind a barrier. "The specimen appears to be using its own mass as a kinetic weapon. Such primitive brilliance." The decimator's shield shattered like cheap glass, its adaptive armor crumpling under the impact. All 3 heads tried to fire their laser weapons simultaneously, which might have been impressive if Harold's hide hadn't evolved to deal with the African sun. The beams scattered off his skin like light off a disco ball, creating an impromptu laser show that had several alien delegates diving for cover. "Our Warbeast's weapons appear to be ineffective," one of the smaller aliens noted, trying to maintain their scientific dignity while hiding behind a potted plant. "Yeah," Jack nodded, still filming. "Hippo skin is about 2 inches thick and practically bulletproof. But more importantly, Harold just really doesn't like robots. Or anything that beeps. Or basically anything that isn't a watermelon." The decimator attempted to deploy its internal missile systems, which turned out to be a critical error. Harold, interpreting the opening missile ports as potential mouths, decided to demonstrate why hippos are considered one of Africa's most territorial animals. His jaws clamped down on the Warbeast's central section with enough force to make metallurgists weep. The armor Commander Pax 12 shrieked, all 4 arms waving in distress. That armor was designed to withstand planetary bombardment. "That's nice," Luna replied, casually tossing a watermelon into her hand. Harold was designed by millions of years of evolution to not care about what things were designed to withstand. The decimator's sonic weapon systems initiated one last desperate attack, unleashing a frequency that shattered several nearby windows. Harold, who regularly dealt with hormonal bull hippos trying to outroar him during mating season, responded with a bellow that made the sonic attack sound like a kazoo at a heavy metal concert. What happened next would later be classified as technically impossible by 3 separate alien scientific committees. Harold, apparently deciding that simply biting the Warbeast wasn't making his point clearly enough, did what hippos do best. He used his massive jaw strength to literally tear the decimator in half. The arena went silent, broken only by the sound of very expensive alien technology hitting the water in 2 distinct splashes. "It did. Did your herbivore just bifurcate our ultimate Warbeast?" Science Officer Glimmer asked. Their crystalline surface vibrating with what might have been terror or scientific excitement, it was hard to tell. "Nah," Jack replied casually. "Bifurcate sounds too fancy. Harold just gave it the old hippopotamus hello." Speaking of which, he nodded to Luna. Luna lifted the watermelon she'd been holding and gave a sharp whistle. Harold, who had been busy making sure both halves of the decimator were properly subdued by stomping on them underwater, immediately perked up. His eyes locked onto the fruit with the kind of focused attention usually reserved for heat-seeking missiles. "Good boy," Harold Luna called out, tossing the watermelon in a high arc. The assembled aliens watched in stunned silence as the creature that had just destroyed their ultimate weapon caught the watermelon with surprising gentleness, chomped it happily, and then proceeded to do what could only be described as a victory lap around his pool, creating waves that sent the remaining pieces of the decimator washing up onto the shore. Commander, one of the junior delegates, said quietly, "I believe we may need to revise our assessment of Earth's defensive capabilities." Commander Pax 12, still staring at the wreckage of their Warbeast, could only nod. Their face tentacles had gone from pale to nearly white. "So," Jack said cheerfully, stopping his recording, "about that class of defensive stronghold classification. The official reclassification of Earth as a class of defensive stronghold took approximately 12 minutes, which was apparently some kind of galactic record. Then again, it's amazing how quickly bureaucracy can move when there's a 3-ton hippo staring at the bureaucrats. We shall need to update all our tactical manuals, Science Officer Glimmer announced, their crystalline surface still vibrating with barely contained scientific excitement. To think, all this time we've been focusing on technological advancement when we should have been studying your planet's evolutionary arms race. Speaking of which, Commander Pax 12 added, their face tentacles still slightly pale. We would very much appreciate any guidelines you might have about approaching Earth's wildlife. For safety purposes. Jack pretended to think about it. Well, rule number 1 is probably don't challenge anything to a fight just because it looks lazy. Rule 2 would be especially if it's taking a nap. Luna, who was supervising as several small maintenance drones fished pieces of the decimator out of Harold's pool, chimed in. And maybe add a note about how herbivore doesn't mean harmless. I mean, Harold here is basically a vegetarian who can bite a crocodile in half. Harold, who had been rewarded for his victory with an entire crate of watermelons, was contentedly floating on his back again, occasionally splashing water at any alien who ventured too close to his pool. The remains of the decimator had been arranged in a neat pile, though pile might have been generous for something that now resembled very expensive alien scrap metal. We shall need to completely revise our combat assessment protocols, one of the junior delegates muttered, frantically updating what appeared to be an intergalactic Wikipedia entry. Perhaps a new classification system for planets with, what did you call them? Murder herbivores. Just wait until you meet the elephants, Jack grinned. They're like Harold, but with built-in armor-piercing spears on their faces, and opposable thumbs on their noses. Several aliens began frantically taking notes while Commander Pax 12 tried to maintain some semblance of diplomatic dignity. Yes, well, the Galactic Defense Council will be implementing immediate changes to our first contact protocols. Additionally, we would like to establish a comprehensive wildlife observation program. From orbit. Very high orbit. Probably wise, Luna agreed, watching as Harold casually crushed a piece of the decimator's armor between his teeth like it was a potato chip. Though you might want to note that some of our birds can fly pretty high. And the cassowaries? Well, let's just say they've got a bit of a reputation. The bird's Science Officer Glimmer's crystalline surface paled. You mean those small descendants of dinosaurs that appear to be everywhere? Oh yeah, Jack nodded enthusiastically. They're basically tiny modern velociraptors. Some of them use tools. The smart ones, like crows and ravens, they actually plan ahead and hold grudges. We had to add a whole section about them in our security protocols. The alien delegation huddled together, whispered frantically for a moment, then turned back to face the humans. Commander Pax 12 cleared their throat. We believe it would be in everyone's best interest to establish an immediate non-aggression pact with Earth and all its indigenous life forms. Smart choice, Luna agreed, tossing another watermelon to Harold. Though you might want to negotiate directly with Harold about that. He's got some strong opinions about robots in his territory. As if to emphasize the point, Harold chose that moment to demonstrate his victory dance, which involved spraying water at least 30 feet in all directions. The alien delegation quickly retreated to what they hoped was a safe distance. Perhaps Commander Pax 12 suggested, trying to wring water from their face tentacles, we could conduct future diplomatic negotiations in a more controlled environment. Oh, this is controlled, Jack assured them. You should see him when he's excited. Last week he reorganized the entire north end of his enclosure. We're still not sure where half the trees went. The aliens departed shortly afterward, leaving behind a stack of treaties, several advanced technological devices as goodwill gifts, and a very formal request to never, ever send Harold on any intergalactic diplomatic missions. Luna watched their ship disappear into the sky, then turned to Jack. So, should we tell them about the honey badgers? Let's save something for their next visit, Jack grinned, watching as Harold dozed peacefully in his pool, surrounded by watermelon rinds and pieces of what used to be the galaxy's most advanced war machine. Besides, I think they've learned an important lesson today. Don't judge a species by its diet. And never pick a fight with something that treats titanium alloy like bubble wrap. He checked his phone, which was already blowing up with messages from various government agencies. Want to bet how long it takes them to request Harold for the Planetary Defense Force? Luna laughed, tossing the last watermelon to their champion. Please, after today's video goes viral, Harold's going to need his own PR team. In his pool, Harold continued his nap, peaceful and content, Earth's first line of defense against alien invasion, and living proof that sometimes the best weapon isn't the most advanced one, it's the one that spent millions of years perfecting the art of not caring what you think is impossible. And somewhere in deep space, the Galactic Defense Council was hastily adding a new warning label to Earth's vile approach with extreme caution. Local wildlife may be significantly more dangerous than it appears.